Right. Good day, everyone. Let me see. Where do I want to start? Um, I first of all want to say the network basics, but I need to just touch on something that I want meant to share with you. Just need to find it. Um, So there is a guide that I'm looking for, and I just want to check quickly. Yeah. So I'm gonna share this video with you quickly. Let me just share my screen. Start recording. Hope you can see my screen. Let me just say again. I see the right thing. Yeah. So there is a guide I want you to follow, and this is leading to the next one, which is network basics. All right. So if you recall, the lab about network basics. I'm just going to open that up quickly. Um, because I'm looking at the basic exercises only. So I'm opening up that one day. So you'll notice that the lab that we see here, which is, just go to that now. With data storage size, I've covered that, but obviously we don't have the software. This part here, the network configuration exercise, because the Linux one, that should be easy, but those are the basic commands. And there's a course that I'm running, OpenELA, that you can also just go through, which is about cloud, which is about computing and not cloud computing. But then you'll learn a bit about this also. And I think the KVM, I'll touch base on that because that's the only labs you have. Right. So when we look at the network configuration, this is basically using the ENCP. So I'm sharing with you, and I'm gonna quickly just share with you, and I'm probably just gonna go through it and see if I can simulate and see how that can work. But that is how to get this emulator working on your Windows PC. It only works for Windows, and that's why sometimes you have to, go through that. So you'll notice here it says, that's the icon, what it looks like. And for those who know packet tracer, this is the ENCP, similar to that. And that's basically how you can test your network configuration. I'm not sure there is a browser-based one to test this, because obviously it's proprietary software from Huawei, so it's always difficult to just get that working. But that's the one that I wanted to get to now, before we continue with the PowerPoint. So, so when we look at this link here, there's a guide that someone set up, I think last year. And so it's dark Tick. And so there's Windows 11 and Windows 10. So the Windows 10 version is, if you have Windows 10, you would go through that process. And if you have Windows 11, you would go through the whole process. So I'm going to try Windows 11 now. And obviously it's a YouTube video, so I'm not going to play it. But basically, what it shows you about is how you would go about installing Windows 11. So there's requirements that I'll just quickly scan through. So you need to have a dual core CPU. So that's obviously the CPU. You have to have a 4 gig RAM, minimum 4 gig RAM. And you need to make sure, if you're running Windows, that your client Hyper-V is removed, if it's installed. So those are the things you have to go through, and obviously it's 9 minutes long. And then also the last thing is, you then basically make sure that NCAP is not installed. So that's also Windows really tool, but that's basically network packet capture. And then there will be a description where you then go about and download the files. Now you can go through this in your time. I'm also just going to demonstrate that to you tonight, so you can just basically see how it works. So I have a kind of virtual Windows that I'm running, and so I want to see if that will really work. If not, it will be a really lost case for me to demonstrate, and I can't actually show you that, but I'll just see now. So this is my Windows 11. Let me just undo the full screen. This one. So this is my Windows 11, and I'm just gonna start it now and then minimize whatever I did here. See now. Okay, minimize that. So this is the Windows 11, and what I want to show you basically is that I'm going to try to navigate that video in this environment. So I'm going to go through this video here, copy it, and then just minimize this, and I'll use the Chrome in this particular environment. So then I'm going to paste that, and that's the same video we'll go through, but we'll do it in this Windows environment. So what you'll notice is I told you that in the description, which is normally the description, you'll find what you need to download, right? So normally, um, this is the drive folder that this person stored it, and we just have to make sure that it's still there. So let's see. Unless, yeah. So there's the installer file. You'll notice it's about 1.8 gig, 1.18 gig. And you basically have to then download that file, right? And that will start downloading. So it will take a while, and then you have to say download anyway because it's a zip file. And depending on the internet, which is mine, it will take longer or it would be slower. So it depends on the speed. So that's basically download that file now. Then, if you look at the example here, you have to also install Oracle VirtualBox. And obviously, if you have Windows, you have to then install Oracle VirtualBox, right? So that's the other option. I just want to see if I have Oracle VirtualBox on this virtual machine. Um, yeah, I do have it, but I'm not sure if it will work. No, that's on the Mac. I need to run it on the Windows. So let's see, Windows. No, that's not what I want. Okay, so I need to install Oracle VirtualBox. So what I have to do is you have to then, there's a drive folder where this is also on, or you can go to the wiki and you can download it from VirtualBox itself. Okay, so let's click on the download folder directly and see what's in there. So there's the VirtualBox installer. And so what you'll notice is sometimes these installers are made for a specific version of ENCP. So you might think that okay, I'll try to, run a different version of it. It might only work with 5.2.444, which is this one. So what we have to do is when we go download it, and in my case, it will say a 5.2.2 is no longer supported. Because of obvious security reasons, you'll notice that normally happens. And now you have that problem where if you install the latest VirtualBox, it might not work, right? So that is the old build, which is no longer supported, but it's still there, right? So you might just have to try and see, will it work, which is the release of 2020, but to ENCP, if it doesn't work, you can try the latest one. But I'm sure you have to think about the compatibility here also as well. So when you look at Windows host, which in this case is what I want to run it on, I have to also now see that it downloads the right file, and then see if it will install that. So you see that install is almost done. And then we'll see if these two work in hand with the type of version that I'm installing it from. Again, as I said, you can see here it says it's no longer supported because it's an old build. But again, it's more just for me for testing it out. And it's just a simulation that I'm testing out. So I'm going to see now if I can install this version. And you'll get this problem. Cannot run it because of software provider updated the version. So that's an error you will normally get. And then that will block you from installing the software. And that's what we got through now. Okay. So if we say, okay, download the normal VirtualBox, which we also all try now, then you get the normal download. And you can see now we're on 7.2 already. And the previous one where Huawei worked on was 4.22. So now you have to see, okay, let's see if this one will work. So what we have to do is we have to say uh, Windows host, because I'm doing it virtually. And then you have to just click on it again. It's downloaded already. Okay, so let's do that. Let's cancel. We'll cancel that one. Right. So now you can see ENCP is done, but we're just going to install VirtualBox first. and then we'll see how that works. So let's see, which one did I click on? That one. Let's see if that one opens. So now you'll see it shows can install. So when I say yes to that, you'll get the virtual box thing that pops up, and then you'll see the installation part it will go through. So obviously I'm installing it on a Mac. So you have the ARM CPU. Remember I spoke about architectures. You have different architectures, but that's just showing you that it's an ARM 64-bit. And then you choose, I think all of this you can choose just so. Then you go next. And obviously it will disconnect the network now because I had to install stuff. So let's continue and then we install. So what it will do is now it will install VirtualBox and it will install a virtual network driver. And that is needed for your emulator to work, which is ENCP. So I'll try now to see will that work. And then you don't have to start it yet, but then you click finish and that will now have VirtualBox installed. Now we head back to our ENCP that we downloaded, right? So we'll open up the folder and that's the folder itself. And then we'll just double click and that will now, actually not double click, you will basically just extract all. And that will extract it. So you can choose where you want to extract it. You can put it in your, wherever you want to put it, but I'll just keep it maybe, I think it's fine here. So I'll just extract it. So now it will run through that whole folder and it will run and extract all those files. And what we'll then see is the files inside which will be needed for ENCP. So again, I'm going to test the newer VirtualBox now with this because I couldn't run the old installer. And if it doesn't work, then it's something I have to take back to Huawei and see which particular VirtualBox would really work with the ENCP. So after the extraction is done, you'll notice that you'll see all these files in here, which is the different setups, which is, I think, these are just the two setup files. You have the ENCP that you have to set up, and then you have this version as well. So that's your ENCP file that installs everything. So there's a different version. You'll see it's V100 R003, and then it's R002. So either way, any of these would work, but that's the file that you basically have to download. I just want to see if the PC100 would work. So if you double click on it, it should open up the file and then you say yes. And then what it will do is we'll open up the ENCP wizard. So it will look like this, right? Welcome to the Enterprise Network Simulation Platform. And this is version 1.300.100. Now, again, the same thing that I'm storing now, if you want to do the HCIA Datacom networking course, this is the practical way of how you would go about setting up for the first time. So we'll go next. We'll go next, next, and we'll do that. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to install WinCap, which is Pick Packet Capture in Windows. And it will also say that Wireshark hasn't been installed in the computer. You need to install Wireshark, and you also need to, so it's picking that up. So what it's saying here now, you can't install call it the software yet because you need those additional things to install. So that's basically what this create. It goes through a validation step. If you don't have that, then it won't do that. So that's the setup. So I'll just end that one. Then the other one, which I think would have everything, would then basically install all the needed dependencies. If I'm not mistaken. I'll just follow that video again to see. So this again, we'll go through the same setup. And you'll notice it's a different version. This is the previous version. The other one was 1.3. With this one, it should basically install all the needed files. So this is the one. So you'll see there's WinCap, there's Wireshark, and we already have VirtualBox installed. So we don't need VirtualBox, right? Because VirtualBox is needed to run your simulated routers for it to run. So that will be unchecked. We go next. Install, and then that will now install the file. So we'll see now after this is done what it has installed, and then we'll see if it actually works. So that's a setup you have to go through in order to get ENCP installed and to test your network emulator. We'll just go through that process. You'll notice also it installed something called AR base. that is your router. So that's the base file, and that allows you to run and simulate a router. And so when that's done, we'll now see basically what we do next. Okay, let's see now. It's installing the wireless LAN AP base. So all the things you say base.vdi, it's all basically virtual, call it image disks. And that will basically now try to simulate the whole process. Okay, we're done. Now it's giving you the WinCap cannot run, da da da. So it gives you all those issues, and that is a Windows 11 problem. Hopefully it will work. So now it installs Wiresock, goes through the setup. You just select next. You can add a desktop icon if you want, but I mean, and then obviously there's WinCap. So let's install WinCap, and that will now install that version. If your WinCap cannot install, try to download a updated version, because it's now saying you are trying to install WinCap on a Titanium platform and supported by WinCap. So that will abort that installation because WinCap cannot run. So Wireshark was only installed but not WinCap, right? So that's fine, because we'll see now basically will it work without that. So when you're done with that, you can either launch the ENCP and you will get problems if it doesn't work, and then you get such error because it needs WinCap. So that's a problem you'll get at first, and you'll show that error now. If I go and I go down to the WinCap, which I'll try now. Let's see WinCap. So that's the WinCap file. And you can click on download, and you'll see there's a latest release, which is 4.13. And it's a very old file, but I mean, it's that driver DTL files that you need. Otherwise, your um, OpenELA won't run. Sorry, not OpenELA, your ENCP. So again, we get that issue again that it cannot run Windows. And this is a Windows 11 problem. And I think if I look at this guy, he'll basically try to get past that stage. So we'll just quickly scan through this video, and just see what he went through. So you can see extract the files. Let's double check. Yeah, I got the same files. Then you had the B15 that we saw there, 5110. Run installation, it says cannot be running now. And you see there was a option that actually gave you an option, but now I'm not sure based on this option that you see there, the run option that you see there, if that is still allowed to run certain apps. So I think Windows 11, Windows 10 might still allow it, but there's a lot of changes that happen with Windows with security and certain apps. So that's what it went through, and you can see there's WinCap again, Wireshark, and VirtualBox, and then it goes through the whole process. So it installs the old version of VirtualBox, and then it goes through the whole process. It runs the setup of ENCP, and then after that's done, you extract that files, and then that should now install the files. And then you get VirtualBox opening up with all those files like that. So that's essentially what you want to get to, but there's a lot of dependencies for it to work. So again, when you look at WinCap, yeah, this obviously with all these releases and things like that, they have um, sometimes vulnerabilities. So we'll probably have to just double check which is the right version. That's not WinCap. So WinCap 11, it's a Windows 11. Yeah, see, it's discontinued. That's the issue, right? So you basically have to then download InCap because I think WinCap is your problem. I think that's the replacement. And I think if you recall in that video in the beginning, he did mention something about NCAP. Let me just see. Yeah, NCAP is not installed. Yeah. Um, because maybe NCAP is our only solution, but we need that library driver to work. Otherwise, Wiresock and that won't work and it will complain. So that is mainly, what you tend to go through, because it will tell you already WinCap is not supported. So bypassing that is an issue because you don't want to install software that's been compromised on your PC. So that's number one. So let's see, which one can we look at? That one says, yeah, let's try this one. If it complains, then it will tell us again. Let's see. Okay, that one went through. It's fine. Let's see if that works. Obviously, this is the troubleshooting you'll go through when it comes down to getting ENGP working. And that's what I'm just trying to show you. Let's see if that looks done. Okay, we look like it's done. And now we'll see basically if we go to VirtualBox, which we installed now here, we should obviously see our images. These are machines. Now, if it doesn't work, it means that there's something else we need still as dependency for it to work because these images work with whatever installed. So we'll try to start it. Let's try to start this one. And then if it fails, like if we get an error, then we'll tell you cannot run because it's not supported on ARM. So that's the issue I will have because like I said, some of these images are made for an older version of Windows, right? And so because I'm running a different CPU, it won't run on the Mac that I'm running it on. But on a Windows machine, the x86 version, it will run. And that's the issue that I'm experiencing. And hopefully you won't experience this. And that's why I can't run this on this. I need to run it on x86 platform and not an ARM platform that I'm running it on. So I thought I just wanted to show you to that stage what you go through, you know, if you want to get this working. Again, this guy, again, he went through all the different things, went through the setup. Just want to make it bigger for you. Then obviously you get that error, which we saw earlier, right? So what he then did is, um, that's a version R003. He basically then basically extract that virtual box. And that will now basically have Oracle VirtualBox, and then it's extension pack as well. But in that, after that's done, you basically then configure it. But I mean, in my case, I can't get to this stage because I need to have ENCP on the x86 version. So this is the screen you will get, and this is where you now can start configure your routers and your switches, and build your network simulation. So that's what I wanted to show you. And then you can, have your emulator in a way to configure your devices. So that's the ENCP. Again, it works with Windows, not necessarily with a Mac. And so that's my downfall on this end. Okay, so I'll just close that because that didn't help me really. And then again, just to, before I start with the presentation, is that when you look at, your classes, so I'm just going to go to your class, which should be under ICT Academy. Online, let's go to courses. And we'll go to ICT Academy class. So there's many classes running in parallel. So you guys are doing the HCI cloud computing. And so what you'll notice is that mm, I moved the date in the future, but obviously there is a deadline for this course, right? So what I want you guys to do is you'll notice that there's this online course that you see there, which is this one. I want you to go in there and do the mock exam because after tonight, I'm giving you a foundation because if you look at the preparations or call it the information of the course, um, going into the mock exam will give you more information. So I'll just click on that quickly, show you. Right, so you'll notice here, you'll see, cloud computing basics or IT basics. Then you'll notice that inside this platform, there is an AI beta version or super AI. That pops up if you need to get help. And so I asked the question last time, I think, just to give me, it gives you a summary already about cloud computing here in a way. But then it also has a intelligent Q&A where you can ask questions, right? So you can see there, and then you can ask any questions relating to that. You can even do an at symbol and select something you don't answer, you don't understand. So for instance, if you say that the question is, let's give an example. So you will say, what are we doing? Cloud. So let's say your question is about what was the tricky thing in your text? Storage, storage systems. How to say, well, not storage systems. Let's call it maybe it's network address translation, or you want to not NAS, what was that thing? DAS, was it direct attached storage, DAS storage systems? How does it work? Something like that. You ask a simple question like that. Then when you do that, the AI intelligent agent will look at the term or something that you don't understand, and it's going to try to give you feedback based on the content. So it's like a whole thing. And then you can see there basically gives you the whole answers. It tells you direct attached storage is a type of storage architecture that connects storage device directly to a server or workstation. And then it explains to you how it works in a way. And you can obviously, depends on how you want it to be. And you could say, please just give a summary and not what it's doing here, but it's giving you all the use cases also. And it's showing you where it's deriving it from. So you'll notice that it's pulling from your chapter 3, which is storage technology basics. And then you can actually navigate to it as well. Now, obviously, this thing is now just jumped into English, sorry, Chinese, but it refers to where it's actually pulling the source from, right? And that's basically how this works. Let me just minimize that. Then again, when you look at, the summary, it's mainly just a summary of the course, in a way, and you can just click on that to minimize it here and to take it away. So what you need to do, as you go through it, you have to then go and you do the final exam, which is the mock exam, right? It's not the real final exam, it's basically a mock exam. And in the mock exam, you get attempts. So you can see a maximum attempts accumulated. I think you get 3 attempts, but I don't know why it would say accumulated, but that's probably just um, on my end. And then you can, what you can do is you can say, I mean, I've done it before, so I will get the answer details and why I failed because I was doing a test, right? But you can also then see if you failed, what was your results, right? So you can actually see where did you go wrong. So let me just make this English, translate to English. Um, come now, don't I try to English? Let's see if I can change it there. Here we go. So this is basically, keeping up, you're getting there, 17 points, and it tells you where you failed. You get to see the question answering details, so where you got wrong, and you only see this in the mock exam, where you got wrong, what was the wrong, and what was the answer. And that's a way of how you can learn about, what you did. So if you look at this here, question 1 on Fusion Access systems. So this is about Fusion Access. So it's now basically looking at Fusion Access. So if you have 2,000 users, how many virtual Now you still have to learn this because it's in that topic, right? AGCs, which is basically um, something that you used for making sure that there's deployment. So it's asking you how many VAGs do you need, right? And so answer here is 5D, right? So that's basically, and it doesn't give you an explanation, but you can also see this in feedback. But currently there's nothing, or you can ask for feedback, but you don't need to. Then the next one, you'll notice here, if you get it right, you get congratulations, your answer is correct, and it will tell you basically, what the answer was, unless you got it right. This one again here, you'll see here, got it wrong again, but it tells you the answer and so forth. If you look at this, is this 17 points a question? So that's how they mark the question, 17 points. This one is 20 points. So this is multiple answer question. And this is like multiple select. This one is basically just a radio button. You can only choose one or the other. This one you have multiple. So you might have one or two or three or four answers that you need to know and answer. And then it obviously will tell you, sorry, what's the answer of that. So as you go through that, you get about true and false questions, which is about 9 points. And then you get fill in the blank. We have to type, the type of things you have to say, what is it, what's the answer? And that's about 16 points. At the end of the day, you need to get above 600 out of a hundred, let me just see what's you need the pass score is 600 points. Yeah. So out of 1,000, you need to just get 400 points wrong. And then your passing score 600 points. If you get that pass, you get the exam voucher. You apply for the exam voucher, and then you go write the real cloud computing exam for certification. So that is basically the process. I have to go now. We can see, and I'll speak to the tier because you obviously have to set the data side now when you guys want to do this. So what you'll notice is that, and I'll just show you now, is that if you go into the course here, under the class, so let's say this is the class, I can see, you just go modify class. It's taking too long to load. Let me just go back to student information, and then do a class report. Now, when I do a class report, it basically just gives me a report of the status of my student. So you can see here it's running, and it's obviously showing me that the 20 that's an old report. So it's not giving me the right report. So I'm waiting now for that report to pull. Let me just do the class report. Oh, it's running already. Okay, so let me just refresh. Let's see, it's probably still running. Yeah, I must now wait. Let's see if I can export the report. Let's see the result. So what it will show you that it is processing. But now the date here is wrong. Yeah, it's right. It's the right date. No, it's a 28 today. So, remember with Huawei, Huawei is 6 hours ahead of us. So somehow this is a day before, but anyway. So when I click on this, right, since that one is processing, it will give me an Excel sheet of your progress, right? So if I download that and I open that, we can see your progress. So I can see, for instance, if you guys have started with it, I can see basically these details. So I can see basically, last time, I just want to see if this is the right data. Um, yeah, that's right. So we'll see the last name, first name, the user account, which is your Huawei ID. And this is obviously what you entered it. The class you're in, the registration time you registered, as well as the enrollment date, graduation date that we think you should graduate, and then your score. Now, this score again is based on when you're done with everything. So there is a learning progress we're checking, which is a percentage 40. And that shows you how you've gone through the course content. So that also counts, right? Because obviously your passing score here is 600. So you need to at least look at the theory inside the online course and not just the mock exam. And then you'll notice that the final exam score is about 60%, which will then come here. The end of the day, what we'll notice is that we'll see how long you stayed in the course, so how long you've going on the online. So you can see here's the evidence, 54%, meaning 34 hours. The student has been, is it in hours or minutes? I think it's hours, unless it's minutes. Let me just see how this thing is incrementing. No, I think it's minutes, 34 minutes. You know, and that's obviously 12 seconds. If not, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. No, I'm lying. Because why would you be 34 hours in a course? That's a lot of hours, right? So that should be minutes, but I'll just double check the syntax. Again, when you're done and you write the mock exam, then this is where we'll see the pass rate. So we need to see that you pass in order to get you a voucher. And that's basically how the evaluation works with cloud computers, with the cloud computing and how we check it. So here you can see it's the same one I just ran now, so I can even open that one. And that will be pretty much the same. Or it would show me a different thing. I think it showed me a different thing, so that could not be the same. So here you notice that it shows me this is the export list. Students again, last name, surname, all that, registration status, the method, how you enrolled, registration type, and then the academy. And if you've been associated with academy, then we'll see that. So I see there is at least two students from other universities, and obviously it depends on if they are have a administrator that could enroll them and associate them to the university in order to do this class. Right. So that is the course students course export, which is this one, and then obviously your class report, which is to see your status in the course. Right. Okay, so that's about all the things around it. And then now I want to just look at the presentation um, that we'll go through, which is network basics. I'll just go through that. So what is network basics? I just want to see. Okay, it's 17:42 now. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we continue. I just want to see. We can start 1950. And we can just, because I think if I look at these slides, these are about, it's not many slides, but hopefully we should be done. I'm going to cover the basics, the important part of network basics. Um, and then also, if you notice that when I saw before I go there, I did share with you, I think I did, but on, if you don't find those videos interesting, but you have to go through course content, there's also, let me just see, go back to the online course. Um, mm, there's also videos online that's embedded into the online course that you can also watch. So I'll just open up that again. So you'll notice if I click cloud computing basics, I click on, because we've gone through this, we've gone through server basics, and we've gone through storage, and we're doing network. So those are the basics covered. So if I go to operating system basics, then you click on that, or you click on, just click on it again, operating system basics. It will open up kind of a slideshow like this, and that's what you will see. But if you want to, get the videos, to see the videos, you would go to, you can go to learning and courses again, but then you not navigate to ICT Academy class, you go to normal courses. So you'll see here's a catalog by major, by job role, by all courses, okay? If you look at by major, you have to look at what is it you're doing, right? You in the cloud computing area, right? So you would be, you could be in your cloud technology fundamentals or so forth, all right? But if you go and you say about catalog, it shows you everything in detail about catalog. And you can also just filter and you can just say cloud maybe, and it will filter cloud for you. So there's the basics of cloud computing. There's ICT competition, cloud, then there's cloud architecture, and that's Arabic, but we need to find the English one. That's Spanish, that's Portuguese. See, French. Okay, I just deconnected for a few seconds. Let's look at the next one. Cloud computing course. This one. Yeah. Let's see if there's anything else above that. That's French, Portuguese. So this one. So if you click on this one, it would open up the course again, and now you'll see the duration. It shows you some other stuff. So you'll notice here, um, you have to declare who you are. If you're a teacher or you're a student, and you obviously go to study. So if you're a student, you go to study. Let's see why it's loading so long. So that's what it looks like. I just have to refresh it. And you'll notice that it shows you the contents, the basics, the server basics, all the things we went through. And then you just say go to study. And what it will do then is it should open up a video course details for you to watch videos. Let me just see if it works. If it does the content again, then I think I'm clicking on the wrong link. We should see the videos beside the slides. Just want to double check. Maybe I've updated that link. Let me just close that. Um, it might also be in the. Let's go back to courses. Courses. That's CIA. Mm, let's see. Cloud. And it's filter here. So we're looking at computing and science technology. We're looking at, now we need to look at any vocational direction, um, cloud computing, the course type, um, the vehicle fine language should be only English. Let's see now. So if you look at this here, we have one actually. I wonder what happened to the video one that I used to have, because I know there was a video one. I'll just double check. Otherwise you'll just go on YouTube and you'll see. So if I go to ICT competition, normally they had videos you can go through. So you'll notice that it says Southern Africa, which is us, and you'll see there's something called learning space. So you can go in the learning space, and I know it's closed now, but that would give you a way of seeing how the tracks work. So there's the cloud track that you want to do. Opens up that, and you'll notice this is what I meant. Yeah. So this is basically the learning space. You'll see there. It gives you past exam papers and how things work. Um, and you can enroll in this type of thing. So if you look at the learning resources here, you have different, things of what they did in cloud. So we can look at this one, and you'll see it says Huawei ICT competition cloud track. So for you to go through this, you have to now understand what's happening in the course. Okay. So again, when you look at this here, you see you have to click on enroll. And when you enroll, that will enroll you to the course. And there's the videos. So it basically goes through. the whole cloud track, what you need to focus on. And I think that will help you also if you want to focus on the exam for this aspect, right? And not necessarily understand cloud computing, but understand really where you fit into this whole thing. So there's long videos there, which is recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to. And you'll notice that if I go through it, look, the competition might change, but there's certain things that you will have to go through. And it shows you basically the format of the competition and what you would go through in a way. So again, when you look at the first stage, there would be like a particular mock exam. And that's the first thing you have to go through, in a way. And that's basically how it works. So if I close this and we go to, um, let's just see if I can find other options. Uh, so there's other stuff that I saw here. Cloud computing. See this one. If it's the same one, then they might have changed the course because I know that there must be one where you can actually see the videos. Let's see if it's this one. No, they actually changed the thing because they used to have videos. Maybe cloud computing in this case, they removed those videos because they used to be videos. But if you go on my YouTube, I'll just show you quickly. So if you go on my YouTube, my screen is frozen. Let me just stop sharing quickly. If you go on my YouTube, you'll notice that under my profile, let me just go to YouTube Studio. Under content, there's a playlist that's on cloud computing basics. So I know I put 3 in there, but there's also a master class I had, which is 13 videos. So I would advise you maybe to maybe look at that to give you more insights, right? So if you open up that one, you'll notice that the videos I have there is the cloud computing basics, the server basics, the storage technology basics, which we've covered. Then the OS basics that's there. So those are the catch-up things that you can do, that you can go through OS basics. So that's a follow-up after the network basics. Then there's virtualization, Fusion Compute, the Huawei platform, the management of the platform, and then Fusion Access. And then how to install Fusion Compute, which I tested. So that basically, is the catch-up classes that you can go through in order to understand more about cloud computing. Then, yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking because I thought they would have the one where you can actually watch the videos online. I know they had something, but the platform might have changed a lot. And that's why I don't see it here because if I look at all courses, all of this have changed now. So there's quite a shift in change, in the way the platform works and so forth. So let's minimize that. All right. So let's go to our presentation right from start. So again, what is network technology basics, right? It's mainly how the networks work and how we talk to certain things, and that's basically the principles of network communication, right? And so when you look at this, what we need to understand from this aspect of this is that you need to understand the classification of subnetting and IP addresses. So there's something called subnetting, that you subnet the network into smaller subnets. And there's also the basic principles of network communication, right? And that basically will be how you need to familiarize you also with principles of how routers and switches work. And you've seen that when I showed you, the emulator from Huawei. Um, and that's an ENCP. And understand the technical principles and basic configuration methods of VLANs. So what's IP address basics? It's basically just sending a packet from one point to another. And that's mainly how it needs to know about the destination. In order for this one here to know where that is, it needs to talk to its other neighbors, and that's how it will know, where it needs to send it through. And that's basically the whole thing about how IP addresses know about things on the network. Now, there's also address format or certain address format that you have to look at. When you look at an IP address, you have to look at from bits and ones and zeros. Then just the IP address that you see 192.168.10.1. And if you understand the bits, which is I think it's to the power of 7, which is about 8 bits, you will understand really how this works with regards to that. So you'll notice here you have 192.168.10.1. Now converting that to bits, you have to then have this power table, which is this one here. And that power table again puts it to the power of 7 is 128, to the power of 6 is 64, then we get to 1, which is to the power of 0. Okay. So again, when you have this power table, that guides you how the router and the switches understand layer 3 traffic and converts it. Because remember, when you look at the network layer, you start from layer 1, which is physical layer, and then you have layer 2, which deals with MAC addresses and frames. But as it comes from the ones and zeros, that already would have to identify what does this bit mean, represent in decimal. And so when you look at the 192 here, it's basically this here. It's the 128 plus 64, and that gives you the amount 192. So that 2 is ones, the rest are 0, and that's what you see here in this example. If you look at this one here, you'll notice that is 168. So what they've done is they've, in a way, on binary, let me just go back there. They have mainly took the one, sorry, let's go back. They've taken the 128, and we've taken the 32, and I'll show you now why. And I've also taken 8. If you add that up, you get to 168. But what you now need to notice is that there's a certain way of how this works, right? It works in a way in this way, right? It works in that order. So depending on how high number is, right, it starts and works this way. So if you look at 10 here, right, so 10 would be, if I have to clear the screen again, 10 would be in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you would be 10 here, so it would be this, and you would have that. And that will add 10. So you start from the highest and you work your way down low, and that's how I'll figure out how that gets converted from binary to decimal. And that is how routers really think. They see ones and zeros on the network. They don't see the numbers we see, which is the IP addresses that we see. That's basically how routers have to figure out things and how to difference between certain packets. Now, there's an IP address structure as well, and the structure is mainly just how things work, right? You have the network portion on the network segment, and you have the host portion. The network portion is how the network have to assign devices on the network, and then the host is basically under that the whole network that's assigned, how the host would get IP addresses supplied from a DHCP server in most cases. Now, when you look at the network portion, it has the IP address, which is here, and it has a MAC address, which is all one. So you'll see 255 is basically all one. So that's the MAC address. And so what you normally would do is you would maybe borrow from the host. Then the host IP address gets less, but you don't have wasted IP addresses assigned to a range of devices that don't need it. And that's the next stop, which we'll talk about VLSM. So this is the different classes. Not going to go much into that. And you also have public and private addresses. So public address is assigned by a corporation. And basically that will allow you to use that number on the internet, that IP address on the internet, and you're not limited behind the firewall. You also have a private IP address, and that again is basically just internal IP address for testing and for research that's available. All right, so that's basically that. Then if you look at subnet mask, the subnet mask basically, as I said, it's there to create and calculate the network address, the network ID, and so forth. And what happens is that um, a IP address gets assigned the IP address, but it needs to be on um, um, a call it a network where the host and everything works fine. All right. So you can see the example here, 192.168.10.255 slash 24. So that slash 24 means that the subnet obviously would be 255.255.255.0, but this is just representing the IP addressing, which is that. Now, if you look at this calculation here, it says n to the power of n minus 2. What I mean by that is the 2 is always your subnet mask, and the other one is your subnet and your not your broadcast. Yeah, it's your broadcast network, your broadcast IP. So it's the broadcast, which is obviously the IP that allows you to have all ones. So when you look at IP address calculation, you have to calculate the network address, the broadcast address, and then obviously the number of available addresses based on that. So a router basically go through this process. We as humans see this, right? We see that 192.168. That's what we see when we get an IP address. What the router sees the IP address in bits, ones and zero, right? It sees the subnet mask in ones in zeros. Then it looks at that and it needs to determine now what would be the network address be. So when you look at this here, it has an AND operation. So it uses something called AND. And the AND operation then looks at what it should be, So it looks at the IP address and subnet mask and it will work out the network address from there. So you'll see here, 1 in 1 is 1. 0 in 1 is 0. 1 in 1 is 1. 0 in 1 is 0. 1 in 1 is 1. 1 in 1 is 1. 0, 1 is 0. And the list goes on. And that's how it works out the whole range by looking at the IP address and the subnet mask. You don't see this if you look at the IP address and the subnet mask like that, because then you have to figure out it's a class B, but how do you figure it out? And the router figures it out by looking at in binary. And that's how the router makes that decision. So again, from there, when you have your network address, the easiest way then for you is keep the network address as what it needs to be based on what you got. Then the last becomes all ones on the host, and that becomes your broadcast address. So you're changing all those bits to one, and that's the broadcast address, meaning that any type of address that you see here, when you get that, it means it will send to any host on this network because it's 255, which means it's all the hosts that will get that. And again, this is just showing you if you say 2 to the power of 16, how many available IP addresses is available. But then what you have to do is you also have 2 to the power of 16 minus 2, and then you get that available host because it's taking minusing the subnet mask as well as the broadcast address. And from there, you can then work out the range of IP addresses you will need for a network. So there's the subnetting. Again, like I said, it allows you to borrow an IP address range from the host. And so I think we'll cover that later because I thought I would cover VLSM here, but looks like it's not covered here. Maybe at the later slides or so forth. So when we look at how the network operates, you have the concept of network communication, how the network functions. Just double checking if um, okay, so all's good. It's all recording. So you'll see how the network functions, and how how everything communicates on the network. So when you send data, right, data travels in one direction or the other way. So in this case here, we have data traveling from B, suppose to A, um, in a way in. And again, you have this data here where a computer here downloads files. One would send obviously files between two computers, and one would download the file. And you could download the file from a server, which is this example here. But then you also have, where files are transferred among multiple computers through a router, which then is basically the gateway. And that's basically how network communication works. Now, with your gateway and your routers, you also have this hypothetical example or analogy where you have the airport, and an item gets loaded onto the airport, or DHL brings it, it gets scanned as a package, and that then gets sent to a distribution center, which then have to distribute it onto the plane, via the cargo. From there, it gets dropped, goes to the distribution center again. From the distribution center again, it goes as a package, and then you get your item. Now, that's example of how the analogy that is basically working at the bottom here. You have your data, meaning it's a copy of a movie file, or it's a part of a movie file, because remember, data gets broken into pieces. It gets sent, and then it gets added a header. So it gets added a header because it's on layer, I think layer one. No, 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 I'm lying. That's layer one to layer three, because the root is layer three. So you have layer one here, and you have layer three here. And obviously, the internet probably works with layer seven because it's everywhere. You can go to a high level. So when you look at this here, you have to encapsulate a packet, goes into the whole process, and de-encapsulate to understand where this packet needs to go to. Then you have the the gateway that has to decide to forward the packet based on the requirements and needs. And then again, you get to the internet, which then obviously is the sky in this case, that lets everything fly or go through. And then you have the gateway router again, which then becomes layer three again. As you come down the layers, and you get the packet, gets it de-encapsulated, it removes this header here, because this is the header. This is the header that gets sent across, So it removes the header, you get the data, and that's it. You have your file that you downloaded. And that essentially is how, the network should work or operate. So you have the question of what is a gateway? And a gateway basically is you trying to send a file through the network. And if you get a bottleneck, it will most probably be one of the routers that's blocking you to send a file. In most cases, it could also be spanning tree protocol layer two, depending on if it's set up 100%. That could also be one of the things. So the basic architecture of a computer communication network, that's a topology there. I'm not going to go through that too much. But you also have to think about the network device system, right? The network device switch and the way it works. It's basically just how you connect devices together. So no routing there, just getting the file and store the file. Then you have a router again. Router again creates that whole, isolated broadcast domains, and the router then basically have control over this network and that network, but it's basically isolated in a way. So if we look at the network device again, there's a firewall as well that you get. And if you had the ENCP working, you could also run the simulated firewall as well. And that's basically that part. Then you have the network reference model, and I spoke about this earlier. I said the OSR model, and I mentioned the application layer. So it's important that you guys understand how this model works, starting from layer one, which is a physical layer, up to the application layer, because each layer does a certain function in the OSI layer stack. Then you have the TCP reference model. Again, the TCP reference model is derived from the OSI. but it has fewer layers because it focuses now more on the buy-in from the from depending on what it needs to do, but it also focuses on what needs to happen. So you look at a TCP reference model and you see that there's these application layer across kind of virtual rows. And that's mainly essentially how you have to look at it from this perspective, right? How it works, how it talks across the different layers. So the data encapsulation, I touched on that earlier, is when the router or any device on the network gets flooded, and then you basically have to make sure, um, when it gets flooded, you basically break it down into smaller pieces. So you send a file, gets encapsulated. So the header again, have to keep the data. The data never really changes. It always stays the same. But the data on layer three, the network layer, becomes payload, as well as layer two becomes payload. Above, when it's dealing with TCP and the application layer, um, it then becomes data. That's basically the whole idea of how it gets encapsulated. And the term is, you have your bit, your ones and zeros, gets converted to a frame. Then that frame, or multiple frames, becomes a packet. That packet then gets broken down, becomes segments, and that segment as it combines becomes the cause of what you want to see at the end of the day, the data that was sent. So data encapsulation, how it works, you send your file, goes down the layer here, all the layers, gets to the physical layer, your ones and zeros here at the bottom, and then it comes up the physical layer, and then it obviously removes those headers that's needed, or adds those headers that's needed, if it's needed or not. And so this is the encapsulation. So other way around. So here you have the headers with the data. And so you would basically just remove each of these headers from the payload or data as you go through the encapsulation process. And so when we look at common protocols, you also have all these protocols that you have under networking, right? You have application layer has certain protocols, transport layer has certain protocols, and the network layer also has certain protocols. And these protocols are important on each layer. And then obviously when we look at the reliability of the network, it's TCP. TCP needs to be reliable in order for us to send files and to trust ourselves when sending files, because obviously there's this whole thing, you obviously heard about this whole thing about quantum computing and how quantum, if it's done right, can, fix certain ways of how we encrypt certain things, how we send certain things, and so that's basically also things you can also think about in looking at. UDP connectionless doesn't really care about the traffic, but as long as you can get the file and stream it, it's okay. So that's UDP and really doesn't care about the famous kind of thing about how you take a file, break it into pieces, and then gets acknowledgement. No, it just basically sends the file, and then it doesn't really care if you get the file or not. But that's UDP. And so if you look at the two, the one is connection oriented, the other one is connectionless, meaning the other one doesn't care about connections. And obviously the one is reliable with TCP because you see banks use TCP. But you also have this thing called, which I think Google did it, and Google called it, what's the name now? Quick. So it's QUIC. So they use a quick protocol, and that protocol then gets used in the Chrome browser, and it checks for that the site that you visit is legitimate, and then the security certificate and all those things. It looks at all those things. All right, then Telnet again is a way of how you can remote login. I'm not sure who still use Telnet, but there is people that use Telnet to log into routers and switches. SSH is another way of how you can connect. to devices. It's a most secure remote way, but also again it all depends on your type of client and environment that you're on. So sometimes you have this thing of telnet, which is the older, unsecure way of how you connect your devices versus SSH. And there's some comparison and disadvantages. So SSH, the data is emitted in ciphertext, so it's not clear text. It's encrypted. Um, and then again, when you look at it, the encryption and decryption keys are dynamically generated for communication between the client and the server. And this is really what's needed. It's that jump, that boost, so that these devices, when they communicate, they know that they are secure, and that's why obviously SSH comes into play. And so when you look at switching basics, these are another practical. So if you had the ENCP, you would basically go through this whole process, and you would basically try to set this whole topology up, where you would then configure the switch to be on a certain IP address. So you'll notice here, and this is what you also have to remember for these type of exams, is how you connect them to these particular ports. So this is gigabyte 001, gigabyte 003, gigabyte 002. Now, if you have this MAC address table and you need to send it the file, right? What you need to see is the MAC address of this one is 001, sorry, gigabyte Ethernet 001. So it's this one here, right? So that's the first one here. The second one is this one here, which is that one. Now, what needs to happen is there should be a mapping. So files need to be sent from this interface to that interface, and vice versa, depending on the setup here, right? And that's basically what needs to happen from this. But they have to operate through the switch, and the switch need to allow that packet to go through. So again, there's an example of how switches work. There's a MAC address of the one switch, and it's source and destination MAC address of two that's there. Again, the router and the switch now have to make the decision and allow the file to go through. Then there's the behavior of how a switch operate. Again, it goes into the switch mode, flooding mode by flooding the ports, then goes into forwarding mode, and then it goes into discarding based on certain ports that's not really configured or needed. And then you have your VLAN basics, and VLANs is basically how you separate your VLANs, and that's also important. So when we look at this example here, right, we have the VLAN and you have a router here. So you have different switches. You have switch A, switch B, and switch C. And what you'll notice here is that VLAN 1 is configured to that switch, VLAN 2 is configured to this switch, and VLAN 3 is configured to this switch here. So there's a certain port that connects VLAN 3. There's a certain port on the switch that connects VLAN 2, and there's a certain port on the switch that connects VLAN 1. And again, from that, you have other switches again that connects it and so forth. So that's a whole basically creating multiple VLANs and broadcast domains. But if you want to restrict people, you obviously have to do certain things on that type of network. Now, there's also the VLAN frame format, and you'll notice the tag in the frame represents what you call it, VLAN ID should belong to in a way. So there's assignment methods, how you can assign VLAN. There's several. There's interface base, which you saw now. There's also the MAC address base, where you apply the MAC address from two hosts. There's the subnet based, protocol based, and then you have government as policy based. Okay. So those are how you work on that. And again, when you look at that, the policy based is more or less um, a way of how you can look at policies. If your organization, decides on policies, certain IP addresses and certain interfaces and certain MACs needs to work together, And that's basically what you would do in that case. Interface-based assignment. So there's an example. You have a VLAN tag 10, and so that tag 10 will have to carry through the switch, but it will only be allowed from this host here to talk back to that host because it belongs to VLAN 10. But they can't talk to VLAN 20. They can't send packs to VLAN 20 because it hasn't been configured, for VLAN 10. So you get something called a trunk, which allows you to have different interface, and that's a trunk interface, the hybrid interface, and you have the access interface. And that's basically how these devices have to work through and get through things. I'm just checking time now. It's really long, but I'll just see how far I can get. Then we have VLAN basic configuration. So that's where you now have to configure the device. And I think when you get that ENCP working, whoever gets it working, let me know if it works, but on Windows, not on a Mac, like in my case, because that's basically where you then can configure your VLANs. I'm not sure if there's a virtual ENCP emulator in the cloud. I haven't actually looked at it. Let me just see if I can. Where's that other tab? So if we say, so Google, Huawei, ENCP, emulator, simulator, online. Is there one? No, there isn't one. You can do a cloud deployment using Netcap, and there's rentals. I don't know why people rent stuff. Let's see what is this one. This one is online. And the other one is just official thread that works with that. Yeah, because it's a pity you can't actually just run the emulator and just test in the cloud. I thought someone would have set it up, but it looks like no one actually bothered to set something up like that. So this one here was modified 2 weeks ago. Probably a person that's trying to get it working, and there's you can see there's the same files. So it has been paused for sharing. And so the professional are only available to training institutions or device dealers. So this is the backup one that's there if you want to practice with it, right? Again, as you can see here, that's execution, what it should look like in a way. But now I think my issue would be is that I don't have a way of running this in a way, and because um, I have not a Windows. So this is basically the executable file there that you can see each here, and there's the file. And someone put it here, and that's basically how you can also get it. So I think that's also another way where you can look at it. So you can see how all I did now was just do a bit of searching to see that. And that's only if you guys really want to play around with this emulator to practice how you would then use your network configuration. Because if you look at the lab, as I mentioned earlier, these are ways of how you can practice these commands using the lab. Run the display interface brief where you see all the interfaces, display the version where it shows the version of the switch, uh, and so forth. And that's really helpful if you understand this and if you have the emulator working in order to get these network topologies working. All right, so that's basically the configuration. So I'm not going to go too much through this. But in my recording that you'll notice that I think if I go to YouTube, just to show you under the network basics here, storage technology server, OS basics, vision access. I thought I had the network basics part of this. Mm, yeah, I thought I had a network basics part of this course here. Strange. Um, HIA network It might be on a different. I don't find it here. Yeah, I don't have network basics. But even if you go on YouTube, you'll find um, many videos. I'm just gonna go back to the main YouTube. But this one, um, just YouTube itself. So if you go here and you search network basics, then you'll notice that some people have created playlists also. There's a full series on data, but that's a different language. Um, that's a full series, 30 lessons. That's also a different language. Um, yeah, some have put it there, some hasn't actually. Um, and that's to install OpenELA, sorry, not OpenELA, the ENCP. There's a, but this is 5.0, but it's also fine because your main thing is that you want to see the networking side of things. Is this English? See this English? Can I play it?
The Huawei HCIA
Yeah, it's English.
computing.
So this again is just a version lower, but it also will guide you to understand, what I'm going through. So if you look at the network technology, that's the one that I would basically, I want you to look at. So if you go here, you'll notice that it's going through everything. Uh, but I'm not sure if it actually has a practical way. What I'll do is also I'll try on a Windows PC to see
G00.
how I can get it working, and then I can get back to you on that offline to show you that this is the steps you have to go through. But I have to test it on a Windows PC. I can't test it on a Mac, and that's basically why I have this problem. I can't run it now because it needs to run on a Windows PC. Okay, so these are resources for you to get going and to get your mock exam sorted, and also just to make sure that you understand cloud computing better. All right, so I'm gonna stop there. I mean, if I look at the routing table, if you go through the videos, that will also help you, because it will be the same that I just covered now, and it will be something that's also added to it as well. All right, and that, students, is your journey for